Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our advanced tips and tricks paper mache jack-o'-lantern tutorial. Thank you for joining me again. In this second segment here, we're going to focus on stems. Now again, this builds upon my previous tutorial that's up on the channel. Those techniques and the materials are still very valid today. I still use them. But this tutorial here, I'm going to show you some other tips and tricks on creating stems using some different types of materials. So let's get started. Okay, so as you can see, I have two other pumpkin forms here. Again, these are from strip mached balloons. For the purpose of this section of the tutorial, I have not clayed over the bottom. I did, cut out the bottom hole, but I didn't clay over the bottoms of either one of these. And I have not designed the face, cut it out, or anything like that. I'm going to skip those steps and go straight to just stems on these two pumpkin forms here. Now these steps are going to be the same again if you used a plastic grocery bag or even a beach ball or a balloon, whatever form you have used, it's going to be the same. So I want to go over a few different really easy, I mean, it doesn't get any easier than this. Number one is using an actual pumpkin stem. This is a pumpkin stem from a pumpkin from last year that I carved, and then, when it's the end of the season and pumpkin starts rotting, I just took a blade and I cut right around the pumpkin stem and I removed it and I just let it dry out. You can actually use your pumpkin stems. This is a really cool one. Because it has lots of cool ridges and it's got a nice slant to it and all those really cool things. And so, if you have pumpkins, especially, the ones that you've bought and they have really cool stems like this, save them, cut them off at the end of the season, after Halloween, and save them. They make great pumpkin stems because they're actually pumpkin stems. Can't go wrong with that. The other thing is that hot glue and other adhesives will adhere to these things, and so will paper mache clay because these are very porous. So you can definitely use one of these, and I'm actually going to use one of these, and I'll show you that, and I'll insert a stem on one of these guys. So that is the number one simplest, or one of the number one more easy or simplified pumpkin stems. The other is that you, and I have in the past, and so can you, use a piece of like a tree branch, small in diameter or whatever. Again, porous, so it will adhere. Glue, hot glue, any other adhesive will adhere to it because it's wood. And so will paper mache clay because, again, the fibers are made from paper fibers. So you could definitely use one of those. And I mean, this is probably the easiest way. And you do it the same way that we did the other when we used the tube, except it's even easier because it's not hollow. You don't have to stuff it with any newspaper. All you have to do is insert it into the top of your pumpkin. And you can make these, you can trim them down if you want using, some sort of like a hand saw or a Dremel. Just cut it down if you want. Or leave it as tall as you want. So if you live in a forested area, these are really cool. And I've made lots and lots of pumpkins using wooden stems like this, and it works great. So first thing that I want to do here is I'm going to show you what you need to do to insert one of these into your pumpkin form. So just like the other jack-o'-lantern that we worked on in our previous tutorial, I made a little dot in the center, and then from that center dot, I drew my line straight down, and that's going to be the area where I'm going to eventually design my jack-o'-lantern face. But this is my reference point right here, and also very similar to attaching a cardboard tube. I'm going to place the jack-o'-lantern, or the pumpkin stem, the actual pumpkin stem in the center. And this is a little bit more tricky. You got to kind of gauge where you want, or how much of it you're going to want to try to insert in here. So I would suggest going with a smaller opening, and then if you need a larger opening to insert it, then go ahead and cut around it to a larger opening. So you can go through the bottom, because you have this big bulky bottom piece here. You can go through the bottom and insert your stem just like that. Now, one of the things that you lose, and it's not tragic because you can recreate it in clay, is all of this stuff down here where it actually connected to the pumpkin. So if you do want more of that to show, then you're going to want a bigger opening to insert your pumpkin stem in and allow it to go up a little further. I'm going to try to show you this in the bottom here. So just like that. I'm going to go ahead and leave my stem just like that. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to find, once again, the center point. And I'm going to position my stem where I want it. Do I want it pointing towards the back? Do I want it pointing towards the front or to the side? I think I'm going to have it pointing to the side, just like that. Okay, my hot glue gun is fired up, and again, anytime that I work with hot glue, I have a little cup of water, just in case I end up getting hot glue onto my fingers. With that stem in place, I take my hot glue gun, and this is why you do want a big enough opening here. And you probably can't, let me try to get a light in there. There we go. Got some light in there. I'm going to try to do this the best I can. A smaller hot glue gun, if you have a mini hot glue gun, is going to work better for this. This one is just, this is a normal size hot glue gun. So I'm not going to be able to obviously get that all the way in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim, or try to aim, and squirt hot glue around the stem. I'm just squirting in hot glue around the stem so that it has some contact underneath. I'm going to go ahead and let that cool. I want to make sure that my stem is still in the position that I want it to be in. It looks like it is. Alright, so I let that sit and cool for a couple of minutes. For good measure, I'm going to go ahead again, and I realize, and some of you could see, I'm sure, let me bring this a little closer, there's big gaps in here, right? That's one of the reasons why I hot glued it from the bottom as well. For good measure, I'm going to go in, and where the pumpkin stem does connect to the form here, I'm going to squirt in some more glue. I'm going to go ahead and try to cover some of these gaps. That gap is a little bit too big. If you find you have a big gap like that, you could take some masking tape, a little piece of masking tape, and block it. Just like that. creates more of an area for you to squirt in some more hot glue. Now, of course, hot glue is not going to be the only thing holding this into place. Paper mache clay is going to be holding this in place permanently. Once again, I squirted quite a lot of hot glue on that, and I'm going to let that sit for a couple of minutes before I start handling it. Alright, that's completely cool. As you can see, I have my paper mache clay out. Before I do anything else, I'm going to flip this back over. You can see where I had inserted the stem for the bottom. I'm going to take some paper mache clay. This is another reason why it's important for you to be able to get your hand in there. And I am pressing in a good amount of paper mache clay all around that stem and on top of that stem. This is going to help it form a bond other than just with that hot glue, so that it stays secure inside there after it dries. So hopefully you can see that. It is completely clayed over. I made sure that around the edges and pretty much everywhere, but especially around the edges, where the clay is making contact to the stem and the strip mached form, press that down really well. I'm not going to bother smoothing that out because nobody's going to see it. So carrying on to the top of the jack-o'-lantern, first thing that I want to do, take a thin layer of clay, about 1/8 of an inch or so, and just go around the base of this stem. The base of the stem where I hot glued it into place, and where it connects to the strip mached jack-o'-lantern form. Alright, I do have my mixture of paper mache paste here, flour and water. You can go ahead and just smooth this out down here, of course, and just leave the stem as is. However, because this stem is, again, it's very porous, it's a real pumpkin stem, I suggest going in, again, with a very thin amount of your paper mache clay and putting that paper mache clay all over your stem. It's still going to retain the shape, but it's going to make it more solid and less porous. Although, you know, yes, paper mache clay is porous. You could also just seal your stem with some polyurethane if you didn't want to do this. But if you're going to put these things outdoors and you're not the type of person that is into babysitting your art, meaning, you know, weather's coming in, you know it's going to rain or even snow or sleet or whatever, depending on where you live, I would suggest putting that thin layer of clay onto this real pumpkin stem. So that's what I'm doing first. Alright, I got that thin layer of clay on there. I'm going to go in and smooth all that out with my paintbrush and my paper mache clay. And as you could see, by adding that clay onto here, yes, I do realize that you've lost some of that really cool, those grooves and that kind of thing, but we can go back and add some more clay, bulk up some of those areas where it had the ridges. Not a big deal. And that it will ensure that this thing's going to be nice and solid for you. You won't have to worry about it. I got that all smoothed over with the paste. I'm just going in, you can use your hands, or, you know, you can use a sculpting tool. So I'll go back to my handy little sculpting tool here. And I'm going to smooth it out even more make sure you smooth out these areas down here so that you don't have a big ridge down here. You don't want that, because you're going to build, you could build upon this after you're done. And while you're smoothing, you can also go back and create those finer details in your stem. It's pretty obvious, like right here was one of the ridges that was more pronounced. So I would just go in first, smooth it all out. All right, that's all smoothed over. If you want to really make this pop even more, you can use a hot glue stick, and you could press in some areas sort of like that to make those ridges stand out a little bit more in your stem. That works. It works great. So I'm just going back over where I know those ridges were and putting them back in my stem here. Just using the hot glue stick. Go in with some more paste, because I've kind of, disrupted some of these other areas where I smoothed over. I have this smaller paintbrush here. This is just a basic artist paintbrush. Going in with a little bit more paste and kind of smoothing over some of those areas where I disrupted with my hot glue stick. Pumpkin stems are not completely smooth. They have ridges, they have indentations. So there you have it. You could use a toothpick, you could use a popsicle stick, you could use any kind of a little sculpting tool. You could go in and put in some finer lines. This is just the other side of this sculpting tool here that I'm using. I'm just putting in a few finer lines. You can spend however long you want to take on these things, or as little amount of time as you want. Completely up to you. You can take your clay, if you want to build up some of those areas, take your clay, build them up around the edge of your stem, just like that. And how many different areas that you want. Go in again with your paste and your paintbrush, smooth it out, blend it in, and your stem is done. So that's one additional way on how to create a jack-o'-lantern stem. By far the easiest. I'm going to carry on now, and I'm going to show you another way to make jack-o'-lantern stems. This next method, I'm going to show you other types of materials and processes on how to build a jack-o'-lantern stem. First step in the process is very similar, or pretty much exactly the same as the way we created this stem in the last tutorial when we built our, designed our face and inserted our thin flexible cardboard to make it more three-dimensional. I'm going to start out once again. This is one of the sturdy plastic wrap cardboard tube. And first things first, I find the center here and I just draw around it. That's where I know I'm going to cut out. Cut that out. My opening for my stem is cut out. Hang on to this little piece. That's top of your jack-o'-lantern cutout. Back to this. I'm going to go ahead and insert this. This is a little bit, because I don't have my eyes cut out, I don't know exactly how far I can insert my tube without looking through the eyes and seeing the tube inside. So I'm going to be pretty conservative, and I'm only going to insert it about right there. So that's about 1 inch. I'm going to make my mark. That's 1 inch. And then I really, for this method, because we're going to make another curled stem using some different techniques and materials, the base does not need to be very tall. In fact, I'm only going to do probably about there. That's about 1/2 inch. So 2 marks. That's how far I'm going to insert it inside my jack-o'-lantern form. That's where I'm going to cut it. So go ahead and cut that. That's cut out again. That's my mark on how far I'm going to go ahead and insert that. And what I want to do on the bottom is I'm going to hot glue the concave area because it's easier than trying to get hot glue in all these little ridges that were the inside area. So hopefully that makes sense. We need to cap it. We're not going to cap it on the top like we did in the previous tutorial. This is just, on this type of stem, we're just going to cap the bottom, or what will be the bottom. For good measure, I'm going to go around here. My glue is cool. I'm going to go ahead in from the bottom, insert my stem, base of my stem, just like that. There's my mark on how far I want it to go down. Hot glue. No, I'm not bothering to squirt hot glue inside and around the stem from the inside on this type of stem. I don't feel that it's necessary, but I will go in and apply the paper mache clay on the inside around that stem after this cools, just like I did on the actual real pumpkin stem. That will ensure that it has a nice, good bond. So again, we're going to let that cool. All right, while I'm waiting for that to cool, I'm going to go ahead and start creating my twisted stem here. A couple of different ways that you could do this. One of my favorite ways to do this is by using galvanized bendable wire. You can make it as long as you want. If you want it to be super, super long and twisted, of course you're going to need more wire. So I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to go any longer than that. Maybe a little bit longer. And wire cutters. Set that aside. I have that. Why bendable wire? Well, because it's bendable. You can twist it, you can form it in any shape that you want. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Next thing I have is some newspaper. So what I want to do, and also, excuse me, masking tape. So with this bendable wire, I'm just going to go ahead and tear off some sheets here. And this is how I'm going to bulk up my wire. Does not need to be perfect by any means, because it's not going to show. No one's going to know. Except for you and whoever you share this tutorial with, obviously. So just tearing off some pieces and bulking up my wire. You don't want to go too thick because, again, eventually you're going to cover this with paper mache clay. But here's my masking tape, and from the very top here I'm going to do the candy caning effect, and I'm going to wrap my entire stem form in the masking tape so that it holds the newspaper onto my bendable wire. This is covered in masking tape. Also, my ends are covered in masking tape. So that the little tips of my bendable wire in there are also covered. And as you could see, you could bend, twist, turn in any shape that you want. So you can go ahead and do that now, or you could do that later. The end that is going to be inserted, because this is the next step here, we're going to insert our stem into our little cardboard tube. So on that end right there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marker. That's how far down it goes. I'm going to make a mark right there. I want to bulk that up a little bit more with, so there's my mark. I want to go ahead and just bulk up that area a little bit more. Once again, go in with my masking tape. Now, my previous tutorial, I sort of used this method, but I used, instead of the newspaper wrapped around my bendable wire and then using the masking tape over that, I used the foam board, craft foam, sheets of foam, if you recall, and that still works great. I'm going to cover my tip here, came uncovered, so I want to go in and cover that again. Why am I doing that? Because paper mache clay will adhere to masking tape and even to newspaper, cardboard, all that, but it will not adhere to metal. All right, let's take a look and see if that's, yep. So I have more bulk in there. So at this point, what I'm going to do is, before I actually insert that in there, I'm going to squirt some hot glue inside. Get my stem in there. And I'm going to go ahead and glue right around. Squirting it inside and around to ensure that that's going to be stuck in there really well. Before we can manipulate that form, we need to let that cool completely. Very quickly, if you do not have bendable wire, you can use aluminum foil. Tear off a good section of it, good length. Roll it up. Candy cane with the masking tape. And there you have it. Same way, stick it right into the top of your pumpkin form. Glue it in there. There are some people who use this. They don't use masking tape and the candy caning technique over the foil. And they do not use the little cardboard piece here. They just simply insert, make a hole in the top, insert the aluminum foil in there, and then they clay over it. Nothing wrong with that, except for I feel like this method here, using a little bit of a cardboard tube, I just feel like it's more sound, it's more stable than just inserting this. And the other thing about just using the aluminum foil instead of using some bendable wire is that it's a lot more flimsy. The bendable wire is it's a tougher material, because I want you to think about something here. Everybody wants to make these really elaborate twisting, turning, slanted stems because they look cool, absolutely, but they're kind of a pain too, because you need to get clay on these things, and the more clay you put on them, the heavier it's going to get, and then it's going to droop. So I prefer bendable wire. Yes, it's still going to droop. So that's what I'm going to talk about now before wrapping this up. Just remember, the more bends, the more twists and turns and bends that you have, the harder it's going to be to clay over. So I hope that makes sense. The next step, whether you are using the bendable wire technique or the aluminum foil technique, is to go in with your paper mache clay. And what I suggest is, excuse me, what I suggest, first of all, once again, before you do anything, is to go in there and clay over the inside of your cardboard tube inside. Get that clayed over so you have a nice bond. I realize with the other one in the other tutorial, I did not go in there and clay that over, but I'm going to, just so that I make sure that gets a nice bond in there. So first things first, do that on the inside. I suggest you do that with any type of stem. Clay over any connection on the inside with paper mache clay. Allow it to dry. You don't have to allow it to dry before you start creating your stem. It's not going anywhere on the inside, and you're not going to be handling that, and there's nothing in there for you to mess up. So as you can see, I'm just layering on a thin, some thin amount of clay. And of course, the areas down here, they're going to be bulked up a little bit more. So this is where the challenge is with the more twists that you have, it gets, the more difficult it will be to get your clay on there and sculpt in your stem. All right, do yourself a favor when using this, either the aluminum foil or the bendable wire where you want a twisted stem. If it gets to a certain point where you begin, it's starting to droop too much from the weight of the clay, that wet clay on there, stop and let it dry. But of course, what I did, once again, I went in with the paste, smoothed it out. I used my little sculpting tool, smooth that out a bit. But as you can see, I've got this area right here, and this is starting to droop down. I don't want it touching this. So I know from experience that if I continue to lay on more clay all the way up to the tip, it's going to be heavy and it's going to droop down even more. So if that starts happening to you, stop, let that thing dry completely, and then go back in and finish off your stem. But that's pretty much it for this tutorial. We learned a couple of new methods, or I hope you learned a couple of new methods on how to use other types of materials and techniques on how to create jack-o'-lantern stems. So in the next tutorial, we're going to carry on with more tips and tricks and advanced techniques on sculpting, pre-sculpting, to bulk up your jack-o'-lantern form without using so much clay. So that's going to be coming up in the next segment. So once again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.